Our guest today is Ashna Zaheer, Securities Counsel and Assistant Corporate Secretary for the Coca-Cola Company down in Atlanta. We're going to talk about Coke's 2020 proxy, a wonderful document. I'm Brock Romanek, today on Zippy Point. So Ashna, I'm a sucker for a good proxy, and I have to say I've been looking at a lot of them over the years, and the Coca-Cola proxy remains one of the best proxies out there. You and the team there have done just a tremendous job. So particularly for these videos I've been making on proxy design, Coca-Cola's proxy is featured quite a bit. So it was great to go to the source and have someone actually at the company talk to the proxy. So thank you very much. I think this will be a very popular video based on the couple of videos I made 6-7 years ago. They were very rudimentary about like 20 cool things about GE's proxy, Coca-Cola's proxy, and those were popular, but who knows? Maybe no one will watch this video. We'll find out.
Thanks for having me, Brock. I'm happy to walk you through the proxy.
Cool. So what we'll do is actually go through 17 of the various items in the proxy. Of course, there's many more. This is about the 2020 proxy. We'll see the 2021 within a few months of this video, but maybe they'll be different. Maybe they won't be. They'll have to be different, right? Year to year, they're always going to be different.
Yeah, I think you'll see some new things. Don't want to tease too much yet, but I think you'll see some new things. We like to keep it updated and fresh each year.
So we're going to start with the simplicity and the beauty of the cover page, and that goes for the back cover page as well. They're important pages, I think, to give people already a flavor of what the company's about what the proxy is about. But I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, so, we use our proxy as more than just a compliance document. We use it with our investors. We have a large retail share owner base as well. And so when someone picks up the proxy, we want them to really get a sense of what the Coca-Cola Company is. And so for the front page, we picked this array of our products because the Coca-Cola Company really is a total beverage company. A lot of people associate Coca-Cola with Coke. But we want everyone to see the variety of product offerings that we have. So that's why we picked this for the front cover. And then if you go to the back cover, which I'll scroll through, we have our new purpose statement, which is refresh the world, make a difference. And so we picked this to really highlight this new company purpose that we launched and let everyone know that this is sort of who we are as a company.
Let's talk about the notice about the meeting. I found this was so unique when I was thinking about the certain areas of the proxy that I wanted you to discuss. Never in a million years would I think it would be about the notice, but this was such a unique way of presenting it. And I haven't seen it done like this.
Yeah, so I think with the notice, as you know, there's a lot of requirements of what we need to put in the notice itself, and it can get a little bit cumbersome if you're just reading text. And so we wanted to have the information easy for share owners to see and pick out. And so on the left side, we really had highlighted the, who, what, when, where type information. And then on the right side, we wanted it to be easy to see the items of business and see how you can vote easily. And so we have an annual meeting webpage as well that we have a lot of information on, and we've included that in the notice so people can just click right to that and get to the information. So we really use this as a way to easily highlight the information to make it as easy as possible for share owners to vote and to also register for our meeting because we do have registration requirements.
You can squeeze in so much more information, it seems like, if you put it in this format.
Yeah, and I think it's just easier. It's just more visually appealing as well when you're looking through. We found that we get less questions as well when it's easier for folks to really find what they're trying to get to.
And then the letters from the chair and from the lead director is such an important part of the proxy that continues to grow in importance, I think, as people find new ways to actually make it visually appealing. And you've clearly done that here.
So for the letter from our CEO and chairman, we really wanted to discuss the highlights of the past year, what we had done from a performance aspect, how our performance was, what happened to the company, changes that were made throughout the year. And so you'll see this letter really focuses on the company as a whole. As you move towards the second page, you'll see on the right we have the highlights that were really important to highlight for that 2019 year. And you'll see these again talked about in our CD&A when we talk about performance highlights, but this is a way for us to have our chairman and CEO highlight what has happened at the company. And then when you move to the letter from the board, this is the letter from the board on behalf of this is a letter from our lead independent director on behalf of the board as a whole. And so this letter really talks about the governance of the company. It talks about the highlights that we had the last year. And we also have our governance highlights on the right side that is an easy, quick snapshot of the governance practices that we have at the company that we're proud about. And so we use the two letters to really have a conversation with our share owners so they can hear from our chairman and CEO and lead independent director. And then it's not in the proxy itself, but on our annual meeting webpage that I talked about, we actually had videos from other members of the board. And so this is just a way to sort of see and hear from these directors instead of just reading it on a page. So we've combined both letters and videos on our webpage.
Yeah, and that I know that's a lot of work making videos in addition. One subtle thing you have here is the use of two colors for these letters, and that there's a hint of red, like on this page, you can see that page 11 highlighted, but not overusing, I think, red, because if you do too much, I think red, then it, if you're trying to emphasize something too much, then like if everything was in bold letter, then nothing's highlighted. But here it's a great way that you've mixed just a hint of red with black, and then using the other formatting practices such as bold, all caps, the red lines actually here. It's a great job.
It's amazing how the design makes all the difference. When you have the design in a way that's easy for folks to digest, you really can get a lot more information on the page, and you also are able to highlight certain very important things in a way that when it's just all text, it kind of gets lost in the text.
So I really enjoyed this About Us section because you cover all of what are really the hot topics of the day: human capital, sustainability priorities, the various accolades that the company's received in recent times. It's a wonderful way to highlight everything in one package in one section.
Yeah, so the way that we approach the About Us, we want it, so if a share owner or somebody opens up our proxy, what are the important things about the Coca-Cola Company to highlight right off the bat? And so the front part is about the company. A lot of this is information that you'll see in the 10K, but it's more easily digestible and it's just highlights. And then we talk about our platforms for sustained performance. And so this, as you'll see later in the document, in the CD&A, we tie our performance to these strategic priorities. And so we wanted to introduce to everyone what our platform for growth is. So we walk through that, and then we talk about our performance highlights, just a snapshot of these highlights that, again, later will come into play in the CD&A. And then we walk through our human capital pillars. And this was new for the past year, but very important. There's increasing focus on human capital management, and we're really proud about the things that we do at the Coca-Cola Company in this space. And so we thought it was a great way to highlight what we're doing. And as you mentioned, we do have our accolades on this right side to just further highlight for people the various awards that we've gotten in these areas. And then sustainability, again, is just a highlight. We talk about sustainability later in the document, but it was a way to sort of have a quick and easy 2-page. You pick up the proxy if you want to know a little bit about the company. These are the areas we want to highlight that we then touch on later in the proxy.
And I would say this voting roadmap is one of my favorite parts of the proxy. It makes it so easy to understand what shareholders are expected to do for this annual meeting.
Yeah, we want to make it easy. So we had each of the items to vote on, and also the board recommendation on the right side, and then the page number cross-reference. So you know exactly where to go to in the proxy to find more information on each of these topics.
And then the governance section, of course, is so important these days, and including a thorough discussion of the nomination process and a matrix for the nominees, director qualifications.
So there's just a couple of areas in the governance section that I'll touch on. We know there's a lot of rules and required disclosure in this section, but again, it's all about making it easy and simple to highlight the information that we want to. So when we talk about our qualifications of directors, we have this key qualifications and experiences page, and this shows the qualifications that we as the company think is important for our directors to have. And so as we walk through the director nomination process, we go through, we have a nice, easy roadmap of how we nominate our directors. And then once we go to our actual director nominees, as you'll see, we have a snapshot of each of our director nominees, the age and years of tenure, so it's easy for people to find, the committees they sit on, and the other board memberships. And then when we walk through each of our director bios, and I'll come back to this snapshot in a second, but when we walk through each of our director bios, you'll see the key qualifications and experiences that I mentioned before directly in the bios. So you can see each director, what qualifications they have, and we go into some detail here in the bios about that, but we think it's important to show the diverse expertise that our directors have. And then the other thing that I'll highlight is we do have this snapshot. So we think it's important to have a group picture. It shows everyone, sort of the board as a group, and how they work together visually. And then we have snapshots. So we have tenure, age, diversity. And so we think it's nice and to have this snapshot so people can see the board. And then as you go down through the bios, you get more information about each of the directors.
Yeah, in these COVID times, seeing a group photo is jarring, so it has a little bit of a special meaning to it. But I love the way that it's in actually black and white, and the same thing with the director bio pictures. I think it's a classy way of doing it. And it does show that the board seems collegial. They're all smiling, and just the way they're pictured. I don't think I've seen another proxy that has a group picture, and it's just a fabulous idea.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad you like it. And again, I think there's just more avenues to really see and hear from these board members. So like I said, the web page where we did the videos from the board members, that was very popular, and we got a lot of feedback from people saying they like to hear from our board members directly. They're not as familiar as company management, and so it's nice to see who these people are and hear from them directly.
Yeah, I know Microsoft was the first company that I saw starting to do director videos, but they only did one for a director like once every 1 or 2 years. In this day and age, you can do it with an iPhone now. A big company like the Coca-Cola Company would probably do it more professionally, but for a small microcap company, you can easily do it on anybody's iPhone, especially with the iPhone 12.
Yeah.
I just got one myself. So the oversight of risk is such an important duty for the board, and I like the way that this proxy ties all that discussion together.
Yeah, if you look at our past proxies, we had the oversight of risk, but we found that it was a little bit hard to really see the full context of how the committees work together, how the board and where management comes into play. And so you're right, oversight of risk is a very important topic for the board, and seeing how these all work together and the role of management, the role of the committees, and then the full board. And then, as you know, cybersecurity oversight is increasingly important. So we obviously have heard from the SEC on this. And so we wanted to make sure to have a call out back, especially for cybersecurity, because I think in the past, a lot of companies would mention it maybe in the audit committee or elsewhere, but I think having this call out box and really going into detail on how the company and the board both oversee cyber risk is important.
So I love this section about the board leadership structure too, because it's an oldie but a goodie topic. But this really ties it all together. Again, like a lot of the sections in your proxy, a wonderful job of tying together something that otherwise might be dispersed throughout the proxy.
Yeah, and I think it's nice to see, as you'll see on the right-hand side, the current leadership structure. So you can see clearly that the CEO and chairman, and there's a lead independent director, and then as you go down in the proxy, we have the duties and responsibilities. So you can clearly see what the chairman's responsibilities are, what the CEO's responsibilities are, and then what the lead independent director's responsibilities are, to clearly show what falls under which role.
And then board evaluation, an oldie but goodie topic, but it's only recently that investors have been actually asking for companies to provide more disclosure about what their process is. And so this is, it's kind of a new development that companies are addressing the evaluation process in more detail, and your company clearly is doing that.
Yeah, and I think, again, back to the design is key. you know, a lot of this information has been there in the past, but it's in a paragraph form and it's hard to really follow the actual process. I think when you see it like this visually, it makes it very clear the steps and how these steps are occurring. And you know, one of the main points is also incorporation of feedback. So not only the process, but what feedback have you gotten and how have you incorporated that feedback? And so I think presenting it like this in a visual sort of roadmap shows people exactly the steps and how the evaluation, the information from the evaluation is used further.
Now, I don't know why I love that term, incorporation of feedback. Sounds like the good name, for like a TV production company when you have sort of one of these sort of odd names for for a film studio. Incorporation by feedback. And then shareholder engagement, and it's such an important topic. It's not required disclosure for the proxy, but many companies are starting to make some types of disclosures. But the way you have your formatting for your disclosure makes it much more easier to understand what your program's about. You even have a calendar for the public-facing events.
Yeah, you're right. It's not required disclosure, but we have a robust shareowner engagement program, and we wanted to illustrate the different avenues that we use to engage. And so at the top, we talk about who we engage, who's involved in our engagement program, you know, from the board to senior management. And then at the bottom, we have this timeline that shows the public-facing engagements that we've had throughout the year.
And then human capital management, probably the hottest topic out there for 2021 proxy season, other than continuing COVID efforts. And the SEC did take action this past year to elicit more disclosure from companies about their human capital management, but this disclosure already gives you a leg up towards those efforts.
Yeah, and so we decided this was a new section in last year's proxy. You're right, prior to the SEC rulemaking for this coming proxy or for this coming 10K season. But we found it important. As you'll see later in our discussion, we reconstituted some of our committees. And so talent and human capital is now part of our compensation committee. And we wanted to highlight all of the different human capital pillars that we're already proud of and the work that we're doing in those areas. And so you'll see we walk through culture and engagement. We walk through leadership, talent and development, diversity and inclusion, human rights, and business integrity. And these are all areas that we've been doing work for years in, but we wanted to use this space in the proxy to highlight it, especially as it now ties into our compensation committee. Of course, this was already there was already oversight in other committees, but now that this has moved into the compensation committee, it's especially important given the CD&A of the proxy.
And then sustainability and public policy engagement. So we already talked about shareholder engagement in the context of shareholders, but now we're talking more about that E&S stuff, which is increasingly important, and I think one day might even become larger than the shareholder part. Who knows? You know, it depends how much the humans care about the planet. But it's really interesting for me to see this disclosure actually in the proxy. It's not, it might be part of your sustainability report too, probably is, but it's great to see it in the proxy.
Yeah, and so again, we have sustainability as part of our performance highlights for our named executive officers. And so we find it important to touch on sustainability here in the proxy because it does play into compensation. With respect to the sustainability report, we of course go into much more detail in our sustainability report, and that is published in April. So the proxy for us comes out the first week of March generally, and the sustainability report is later in April. So this is just kind of a preview of what you'll see in the sustainability report. But again, important to link this sustainability to the performance highlights that we then use to evaluate our executives.
So you touched upon the Talent and Compensation Committee, that their province might have changed a little bit. And I think that's going to happen at a lot of companies. And I have a separate big guide about how you go about, modifying your charter and the other documents you need to consider when you do that. But it's great to see disclosure about this in the proxy like you have here.
Yeah, and the way that we wanted to highlight this, because you're right, there has been expanded responsibilities at the Compensation Committee to include talent and human capital. And so we use these insight boxes to really highlight that. So they really popped out when readers were going through our proxy. And so you'll see a talent and compensation committee insights box that talks about the expansion of scope of responsibilities of the talent and compensation committee. And then we also later in the document, and I'll scroll to that, talk about the calendar here that we have that shows both the compensation elements and the talent elements. And so readers can look through the calendar and see, you know, the broad scope of this committee and the really important work that this committee is doing. And so we thought it was important to kind of use these boxes to highlight so folks could see it easily. It's easy and it jumps right out at you.
And then what we do, what we don't do in the comp area with checklists, you know, everyone loves a checklist, and why not use it here to make it easy for investors to understand exactly what the company is doing and not doing with compensation.
Yeah, and I think, Brock, you'll probably see this now widespread in almost every proxy you pick up. You'll see this checklist of what we do and what we don't do. But you're right, it's a simple, easy way to show in a bullet point format of the things that the compensation committee does with respect to pay practices and the compensation practices that we don't do.
And then you use graphics throughout the compensation disclosure, which I think makes it easier for investors to understand what the metrics are that are being used to help incentivize management.
Yeah, exactly. Again, I think design is especially key in the CD&A, especially as we're talking about the different pay elements, you know, walking through and visually showing how the annual incentive works or how long-term incentive works. I think it really helps people read and pick up, and it's easy to understand. And so I think graphics are definitely key in the CD&A.
And that lends itself also to a nice discussion about the compensation decisions for each specific NEO, and the way your proxy breaks that down, I think makes it easier to understand what the comp committee's thinking is.
Yeah, so we use this as a quick snapshot to see exactly how the compensation committee was evaluating each named executive officer. And so on the right side, you'll see the different elements of their pay. On the left side, you'll see highlights with respect to these 3 areas of leadership, operation, and people and culture that are used to determine the individual performance amount for the annual incentive. And so I think it's easy for people now to see exactly what highlights went into that individual performance amount.
Yeah, and the formatting is key again. It makes it so much easier to understand what's being done.
Yeah, exactly.
And then probably my favorite part of your proxy is the annexes. There's 2 of them, I believe, in the Q&A format. It really provides a wealth of information for shareholders, practical information about what they can do in order to attend the meeting, in order to vote, and any other question they might have.
Yeah, and so Brock, there's actually, I think we're up to 4 now. So we have the Annex A, which is the main one, is about all of the Q&As that you're talking about. And you know, it's an easy way if you just have questions on how to vote or how to get materials, you can come to the annex. We also have other annexes. So if I move to Annex B, this is where we talk about the summary of the plans in which our named executive officers participate in the past year. And I think this is a nice way to go through all the plans, and it doesn't really clutter up your disclosure elsewhere. And so you have all the plans here. And so that's our Annex B. Our Annex C is the reconciliation, as you know, the GAAP, non-GAAP reconciliation. Again, it doesn't clutter up the earlier disclosure, and so we put it at the end so that we can go into the detail that we need to. And then the last annexes, of course, are forward-looking statements. And so we use these annexes as a way to have an easy way for people to find the information that they need, but that it doesn't get lost in the document or that it's not too overwhelming in the document.
So Ashna, that was so interesting and informative. And I got to say, this video made me think of I love making t-shirts saying Proxy Geek Incorporated on the back with a staff label on the front. I don't know. but you'll be the first one to get a shirt if I
You'll
make
have,
them.
you'll have to send me one, Brock. But thanks so much for having me. It's been great to walk through. These videos are super informative. So I know I always click on them, and I've been a long subscriber of different panels and conferences that you've put together. So excited to see what else you have in store for us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks.